out there patrolling. He had like 1,000 tackles in the first game of the year. What he gave the Packers. So we need a repeat of performance from him, and if Nakobe Dean could also match that, that would be absolutely huge in slowing down the run game.
All right, what that was is a command radio set up to get AM broadcasts. This one does AM broadcasts. This does 150 kilohertz, or maybe 190. 190 to 555 kilohertz would be the bottom of the AM broadcast band. Let me get the camera on it. All right, let's go over basic what they do. This one's the AM broadcast band, and to get one of these, they're not super rare, but in other words, there was an article out that told them how to turn this into a hi-fi AM tuner back in the 50s, back in the early 50s. Anyway, so people bodged these, they gutted them, they followed the article, they didn't get it working, they ended up on eBay. It took 3 of these to make one. That's how bad they bodged them. All right, so that's AM broadcast band. This is one that's below the AM broadcast band. It goes from 190 kilohertz to 555 kilohertz, which is the bottom of the AM broadcast band. Now, what this is good for is this does 455 kilohertz and other IFs. So if you take wire from another single a radio that's only a single, not single. Oh man. Anyway, you hook this up to the IF of the other radio, a single conversion radio. You take this and you run it to the IF, and now you got a dual conversion radio. It's called a Q-Fiber when you do it. That's the actual thing. See, so much I have to tell you. Overview of this system. These are called command radios. Some are called ARC radios, and some are called BC 454s, whatever. And if you go on the internet and you ask a question, watch out what you say, because if you call it an ARC radio when it's a BC radio, one's the Air Force and some are the Army. See here, they're black in color. This is the same radio, but one's for the Air Force and one's for the Army. So they don't answer your question. They get into a fight. You got to watch what you say when you go on different groups, because they just like to argue. And that was more than once. Some poor guy called it a command radio or an ARC, and they didn't like that, because there are guys that know all the BC numbers, all the ARC numbers for these different models. Now, there is one model here that's missing, and that's 0.33 to 0.55. I guess it's kilohertz. It's a beacon radio. So is this. This is also a beacon radio. And what a beacon radio is, if it's foggy out and the aircraft has to land, there's no GPS years ago. There were 2 antennas on the plane, and they could null it out, and they would know they were lined up with the airport and the runway if it was really foggy, and they could still land. That's how they did it. A beacon radio, as they're flying, it helps them fly across the country, so they stay on track. They don't go off into Canada. Anyway, it's homing beacons. There are all kinds of beacons. Read up on beacons. All right. So this one, AM broadcast, got bodged really bad because people were using them for a high fidelity AM tuner. See, back in those days, back in the 50s, early 50s, to have stereo, you had a radio that was on the AM broadcast band on one station, and FM was the other channel, right? So you had to have 2 stations on at the same time. They were usually both NBCs, both WORs, but at some point the FCC said, you're wasting too much space, radio space. So they created a multiplexer for the FM band radios to give you stereo. Now this one here is a 3. I think it's 3 to 6. Yeah, 3 to 6 megahertz. And this is my favorite one. This does up at the top. It'll do Radio Cuba. There's a few other shortwave stations in there, but the ham band is in there. You get the AM guys, and then there is a BFO in this radio, that will allow you to copy code, and it also does sideband because it's not a regular BFO. It's a BFO, but in other words, they use a mixer tube. The BFO signal comes in on one grid, and then the other 455 or whatever the IF is on this, it's not 455. It comes in on the other grid of the tube, and it mixes correctly so you can get sideband. That's all I wanted to say. And then this one down here, this one goes from, I believe, 6 to 9 megacycles. Even in the thing here. All right, over here, this last one, it goes from 6 to 9. Now, let's go back to when you first get it and you want to work on one of these. Wait, hold on, I got to loose something. All right, hold on. My tripod's loosening up on me. All right, that seems good enough. Well, anyway, when you first get this radio, it's got to be recapped. And I did a video on these. These are called flower pot. My nails are long. Flower pot capacitors. And you grind the top. I showed you how to grind the top very gently. This ring comes off. You heat it up with a heat gun. And out comes the capacitors in beeswax. And then you restuff it with 3 capacitors. They're 0.01s. And that's the solder connection. That's actually all 3 caps go to a single lead and then out through here, and you solder it. And then when you mount this flower pot, that's your grounds for your capacitors. These terminals on top, you could salvage those. All right, you move the wires, you clean them up, and then you have to run a drill. After you take your caps out, run a drill through, a little tiny drill through the holes, and put your caps up through those holes, and then resolder them. You know, this is a work of art if you do it this way. It makes it a lot nicer. Hopefully, everything's still in focus. I did a video yesterday, and it was out of focus. Anyway, all right, so you're going to have to recap it. Then the other thing is going to be power supply. Now, that's a big stickling point. Now, let me show you back here. See on the back of that radio? There's a dynamotor. This black thing is a dynamotor. I'll disconnect it real quick here and show you. Now, that's what the radio normally ran on in the aircraft. This is a 28-volt dynamotor. Bottom of it, there's a motor in here with a generator. So some radios will come with this. Well, this needs a power supply, and it needs probably 6 amps. It probably says on it, it's in the books, how many amps it needs at 28 volts. And the 28 volts, it says 0.06, 0.66. Anyway, at 28 volts. And what happens is the 28 volts from the aircraft light the tubes. And then, why am I, over here. Over here, I was there. The 28 volts lights the tubes because they're wired in such a way they equal 24 28 volts. The motor spins and there's a generator in there, and that makes the high voltage for the radio. Now the next step is to do what I do. I created this power supply, and I showed you it. I did one for the BC 348, and I did one for this one. For these. All right, here it is. It just disconnected. Here it is. I showed you a video of this thing. See on the bottom, there's 3 miniature banana jacks. This is actually the banana sockets. 3 of them. These holes line up with the shock absorbers on the back of the radio, just like the dynamotor does. Now, you got to watch out when you buy on eBay. A lot of times, the shock absorbers have been taken off, and so is the connection for the power supply. So you can't use a dynamotor or a power supply because someone has started bodging it or following the information in a booklet that's available. I'll get into that in a minute. So basically, you have to have power, right? Now, as far as the speaker goes, you can bring the speaker out to a jack in the front. Now, I have an adapter for this. This goes to my speaker, and in the speaker is a transformer. It's a filament transformer, and so I can come out of this high impedance. This is normally for a headphone. Now, most of my radios have a miniature headphone. You might get one of these radios with this plate, and it'll have a 1/4-inch jack in it. And that's what they were doing back in the 50s. I just use it because it gives you more room to turn the volume knob. All right? So we covered the power supply. You're going to need a power supply. I covered that. That's a video I did. Watch out what you're buying. I'm going to show you that in a minute. Hopefully I remember what to show you. This switch, on this one there's no switch for BFO. Here it is on this one. In the frame. This is your BFO on and off. Most of the sets have BFOs. Now, let's talk about these Bodgeroonies. No, before we go into Bodge, let's talk about the options for the knob. All right, we did power supply. All right, now we'll go to the knobs. There's so much to this. Now, this knob is, well, we get it in the frame. This knob can be $30, and it's called a local knob. All right, you turn this, la 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 la, and there's a big one of these that goes on here. You can get. I don't know if it's from this radio, but let's see if we can get this back off now that we pushed it on. All right, maybe if we loosen it up. All right, let's go to the next radio to show you. This is a knob that came from Fair Radio years ago. And it's got a spline in there. Goes in here. And you try to catch the spline without forcing it. In other words, you want the spline to line up correctly. All right, this was a knob you could get for a few dollars. You can't get it anymore. So now, you might see these things. And you put one of these spline-a-roonies into here, and then you can put a knob on it. I won't do that. You gotta imagine there's a spline in here. Now, if you don't have one of these, I showed you in a video how to make your own knob. And this knob is just a regular knob, and you put a 1/4-inch shaft in there and some ice tubing. Now, just for servicing, over here, this is just a piece of ice maker tubing. Here, see? This will get you by when you're trying to repair this. Now, this one's already worn. Let's turn it around. Get more grip to it. All right? So this is how I got by. Get this ice maker tubing as in a pinch to get this, be able to turn this. Then you can add the ice maker tubing to this. Or hopefully on eBay you find one of these or one of these. And why did this get stuck on there? It's so hard. Oh man. There must be a trick to it. It just came off. Okay. This is the knob that was like $30. Now, these things are not for knobs. These are salvaged off a cable. All right. This has a cable that screws on here and goes into the spline. It's like a speedometer cable for a car. And it runs up to the, from the radio room up to the pilot's area. And the pilot has a little miniature dial with one of those little spinner knobs, one of these. And he can control the radio at the radio room from up at, where the pilot is. Now, these covers, when you open them up, hopefully they're sprung. A lot of these radios that I have been sitting a while, and they have their own personality. All right, let's go with this one. Try this one. And a lot of it's temperature too. This is aluminum, and okay, that should be open then. All right, in here you can find, there's the tube layout, tells you where to put the tubes, and a lot of times in here there's a post, and on there's the little miniature dial that matches the front dial of the radio, and that's to put up with the pilot. So if a guy's setting the plane up for the day and they're using certain frequency ranges, he takes the little knob, the little dial that's here, and puts it up in the little unit up in the front of the plane. Now, you can see in here, This is one of 3 radios to make one. There's the IF cans, the 3 of them, and they're some of the most beautiful IF cans you ever want to see. Now I have some here. Here's an IF can with its black top. They're beautiful inside. I did a video. I showed you what's inside of this. Right? Now the other thing too is each radio has a set of plug-in coils, and that sets the frequency for the radio. Now I'm going to tell you right now, you can't just move these between radios. The radios are identical, sort of. What's different in these radios is the tuner in the front end, the tuning capacitor, is different for each frequency range. The other thing that's different, I don't want to forget, is each one of these radios has a different IF frequency. They don't use 455. That's very important. And you got to watch out. When you get a radio from eBay, one of the dealers might have just loaded it up with the wrong IF cans. Each IF can has a number on it, right? It also has color code. Where's the color code? Here's the color dot. And then the lineup dots. We're just reading about the IF cans to verify you have a correct set for your radio. Might make you nuts. Now, you can't put this IF in any one of the 3 positions because this plate here would have to be changed. See, this guy's, if you follow the group, the more you know about the radio, the more you know people are bullshit. Oh, you can move a different IF can over in there. No, you can't. You can't. They're made only to go in one position. All the radios don't use the same IF frequency. Even the knobs. All right, this has the black type knob. And this is only a dust cover. All right, there's your adjustments. All right, look at this one. All right, this will don't count on it working all the time. Now, a lot of this stuff's aluminum, and some of these there's a post, and you can move the post up and down, and that affects the coupling of the IF can. These are beautiful IF cans. And like I said, I don't have one of these open to show you what the tuning capacitor looks like. But here, looking down, here's the miniature banana jacks facing up. There's 3 of them. There's 4 shock absorbers with rubber on them. They'll be bodged off. What caused the bodging, or the fact that people disrespected these radios? A couple guys come out with some. You'll find them. They're modification booklets. And those modification booklets, the first thing they tell you is you've got certain things off the radio. And what you're doing is you're changing the transformer, the output audio transformer, to low impedance so it can run a regular speaker. What you really should do is just take a speaker, put it in a box, and put the transformer in the box. And then you don't have to do it. Well, they don't just tell you to remove the audio transformer. For some reason, they have you take the BFO unit off, transformer out. So each radio has a different IF and a different BFO. So you take this stuff out and you throw it away. And then at some point you realize you can't copy code because the guy had you take the BFO transformer out to make room for a transformer for audio. See, I guess they're just saying, well, we'll keep the guy busy. He'll be happy he bought the booklet. Meanwhile, they're doing real damage because at some point the guy's going to hear code and wonder what it is. He's going to go like that. There's no boop, 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 like that because there's no BFO on the radio. But those booklets sold like crazy. And the first thing they do is have you do all this gutting, and you'll mess up. If you don't know what you're doing, you're going to mess up. Those are the radios that you're looking at right here. They've been repaired and rewired correctly, and the parts that were missing I've found off other radios and put them in here. But I made my own plates, the front plate. This is a homemade one. This was homemade, copied like a real one. It's got the folded up ends. Right? Now, what used to be in there, this is what used to be in there. There's a box inside. But in other words, there were options for these radios that I don't think they ever got to use. But in the market, the aftermarket, what people do is they just strip the one plate off and use it. Put their, in this case, a headphone jack, volume control, and BFO switch on and off. You know, there's incredible amount of documentation on these radios, but I just wanted to give you an overview video to go along with all my other videos. When you look at this, you say, gee, what's that? Go looking for the correct video. See, yeah, I could have indexed my videos better. I could have done a lot of things different, but I'm a just get it done type of person. Because there are guys that sit there with a bow tie in a chair, and they have one of these that's in mint condition, and they regurgitate the facts that they wrote off Wikipedia, is it? And I look at it, what good does that do to anybody? You know, understanding that if you have a dynamotor, you're going to have still have a power supply to run the dynamotor. And if you do make a supply like I show you, you still have to have those shock absorbers on the radio. They've been gutted because one of the magazine articles told them to gut it, and the person never put the power supply on the back. They didn't finish. They didn't finish. See, what they do is they get the magazine, they get the unit, and they do the first steps, and then that's it. And you get a lot of those radios on eBay. They're missing pieces. They're missing covers. They're missing, you know, like this cover here is missing on this one. You'll see them on eBay. You know, the lid. You know, it'd be nice to have the real lid that goes with this radio, right? And like these aluminum ones, they expand from the temperature, and these sliders that you push them back in order to lift the lid off. See, now the lid might come off. Yeah, it's all temperature. I brought these out of a cold room, and they're still cold yet. But there's a lot to this. If you've done kitchen radios, not Charles kitchen radios, but just regular kitchen radios, try one of these. But you're going to have to make a power supply. And I got the other day, what transformer do you use with the dynamotor? And I do have that unit. I might have shown it once. But he's in one of the other, he just dropped in somewhere and started asking me questions about a dynamotor transformer. I don't remember. I switched over to making a power supply like this. You know, I'll show you. This comes off here. You bring it off here. You wiggle it, comes up, and you're over on this one now. Well, it doesn't always go first try. But in other words, that's it. It makes those banana jacks make contact, and that's how the dynamotor works. And the dynamotor also has levers that switch in. And after you put the dynamotor on, let me show you them real quick, because you might go get nuts when you first. These get pushed in after you put the dynamotor on, and there's a collar on those shock absorbers. And if you get this, you know, a dynamotor on, you can't get out. You have to pull these out. There's a lot to this. All right, that's all I got to say. There's a steep learning curve, and if you go on the conferences, they just fight. And my videos, see, I can control my videos and show you, you know, like that. I call this a Fair Radio knob. Right? Fair Radio went out of business. Don't even bother looking. But I show you, you can use a piece of ice tubing. This is for the tubing for the ice maker for a refrigerator. That'll get you, you know, you'll know you got a working tuning capacitor. You'll be able to use it. And then you get a little fancier, you put a knob on it, and you're going to, besides the knob, you're going to need a 1/4 inch piece of off a volume control, whatever, off the shaft. Put that in first, then the ice thing on there. Leave a little bit to grab it, and that'll work too. These are real nice if you get one of these. I got a couple of them. They're floating around right now. It was a brown one. Well, it was here. Oh, here it is. No? Yeah, here it is here. I have another one. I have a box of parts like you wouldn't believe. And I was just looking at it, and I remember buying these. And someone has salvaged one of the cables that go out of here up to the other unit. And these were, I think these were $30 for 2 of them. And the cable's over $100-something now. And they're rusted. They're all rusted because they're steel. And there's a lot to be learned on these radios. It actually can do DX with the AM broadcast. It has an RF amp in the front end, and it's not a junky radio. It's a good radio. They're all nice radios, and my favorite is the 3 to 6 megahertz they call it now. That's my favorite. And this one I actually have on the back of it. I have 2 wires coming out, and that's so I can test dyno motors. See, some of these are test beds, and I got really into it. And my favorite is this one. Second favorite is the one that does the AM broadcast. And then, like I said, this can be used for a Q-Fiber rig. You come off your IF can of your single conversion radio. You go into this. You turn this to your IF frequency, right? And then you have your sound come out of here. I think you can do the code from here or the other radio to turn the BFO on either radio to get your code. But it makes the radio more narrow when you add a second conversion. It also gets rid of ghost stations and stuff like that. But that's what these are used for. Now eBay has filled up with the 0.33 to 0.55 beacon ones, and I won't call them totally worthless. In their good shape, you can use the parts to fix something else. I think that's it. All right, that's it.